And we've got this YouTuber, right? He's talking to folks who actually left.
Yep.
And some of their reasons are, well, pretty wild. Like one person moved to Toronto and said, Vancouver's a total shithole now.
Oh, wow. That's harsh.
Around.
It's a strong statement for sure.
Yeah.
But, even though we're not taking sides or anything, it does feel like something you see more and more these days, this feeling that Vancouver's not what it used to be. Like the quality of life is going downhill and maybe even faster than other similar cities.
It's not just talk either. Because YouTubers notice, like, more tent cities popping up and the city's just feeling kind of grimy. It's been just a few years, too. It makes you wonder, Rick, have you noticed that where you live, is it as bad as Vancouver? Like, what could make it so much worse there?
That's a good question. Well, Vancouver's kind of squeezing, right? You've got water on one side, mountains on the other. So maybe that makes problems like homelessness more obvious. Everything's packed in, so you can't really ignore it.
That's true. And then there's the whole affordability thing, which is huge, obviously. Like, sure, the average home price is down 5% from the peak, but that interest rate hike, that's the real killer, I think.
Absolutely. To put it in perspective, the average mortgage payment on a typical Vancouver home is over $5,000 a month, more than double what you'd pay in Calgary. It just shows how much interest rates can change whether you can afford a place or not.
5,000. Oof. Makes you think twice. And speaking in Calgary, it seems like a lot of people are saying, okay, I'll take affordability over Vancouver's cool stuff. Almost 8,000 people moved from D.C. to Alberta just this year. Can you believe that?
It's a big number for sure.
Yeah.
And it points to this bigger trend. Like, Alberta's economy is, well, booming right now, especially certain jobs. So it's not just people running from high costs. There's also this pull toward what Alberta's offering. It's like they're getting pushed out of Vancouver by the cost of living, but then pulled to Alberta by the promise of something better.
I get it. And then this is where it gets even more interesting. The YouTuber was talking about how much remote work is blowing up. And it's like, game changer, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you could work from anywhere, would you really stay in a crazy expensive city?
Yeah, that's the question a lot of people are asking themselves now.
Right.
This whole work from anywhere thing, it's probably just going to keep growing. And what that means is where you live and how much you make, they're not so connected anymore, which is a big deal for places like Vancouver that have always relied on attracting, the big earners.
Exactly. But it's not always about leaving Vancouver completely either.
Yeah.
This YouTuber also mentioned this trend of like cool stuff popping up outside the city. Good restaurants, trendy cafes, all that in places like Langley and Abbotsford. So maybe it's not about saying goodbye to the whole region, but more like finding that sweet spot where you can have the good life without the insane costs.
You've hit on something important there. It's all about figuring out what you're willing to compromise on. What are your trade-offs? Like maybe you can live without the nightlife or some fancy stores if it means, breathing room financially. It's a personal balance. Everyone's got to find theirs.
Totally. And okay, this next one is a bit out there, but the YouTuber brought up electric vehicles. Like he thinks cheaper commutes in EVs could actually make living farther out more doable. What do you think?
It's an interesting idea. I mean, EVs can definitely save you money on gas, but whether that influences where you choose to live, well, that's trickier. It depends on, charging stations, how far your commute is, your lifestyle. It's complicated.
Yeah, it's not like a magic solution for everyone, that's for sure.
Right.
But it does get you thinking about how these changes in transportation could affect where we decide to live, down the road.
It's part of this bigger trend we're seeing, people rethinking what really matters. Like being in the heart of the city, maybe that's not everything anymore. People are starting to prioritize affordability, lifestyle, flexibility, So we've been talking about what's driving people away from Vancouver, but this exodus, it's not just about individual choices, is it? It has to affect the city as a whole.
Yeah, totally. Like if Vancouver keeps losing people, especially those who, have good jobs and contribute to the economy, what does that even mean for the city down the line? Can it even keep up?
Well, one thing to think about is the shrinking tax base. Fewer people mean less money for the city to spend on things like infrastructure, education, social programs, all the stuff that makes the city work well. And if those start to slip, it can, create a downward spiral, making Vancouver even less attractive. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like a vicious cycle. Problems just lead to more problems. What about businesses, though? If a bunch of the workforce is leaving, that's got to hit them hard too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Businesses need skilled workers, and if they're all leaving, it creates a labor shortage. It makes it tough for them to, function, grow even.
Yeah.
Could lead to closures, job losses, the whole nine yards, and that just makes things worse, encourages more people to leave. See what I'm saying?
It's a mess.
Yeah.
So how do you even break that cycle? Like, is there anything that can be done to make Vancouver more appealing again, even with all these problems?
That's the big question, isn't it? There's no easy answer, but tackling the affordability thing, that's got to be a priority. Like, think about policies that encourage developers to build more affordable housing, maybe offering incentives or exploring different housing models, something like that. Anything that takes some pressure off.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's not just about housing, is it? We talked about lifestyle, things to do, all that. What can they do to improve those areas and make Vancouver a more desirable place to live, even if it's still pricey,
Right. Investing in public transportation would be huge. Creating more green spaces, supporting local businesses, cultural stuff. You got to make the city, vibrant, livable, not just a place to work and sleep.
It's got to feel like a community, a place people feel connected to and want to stay in.
Exactly. But it's also important to remember Vancouver isn't alone in this. I mean, cities all over are dealing with affordability, changing work patterns, all that.
So are there any lessons they can learn from other cities who have, tackled these things successfully?
Oh, for sure. Like Copenhagen, Amsterdam, Vienna. They've done some really cool things with housing, transportation, making the city a good place to live. Studying those approaches and figuring out how to adapt them to Vancouver, that could be really helpful.
It's about taking the best ideas and making them work for Vancouver specifically.
Exactly. And involving residents in the process, that's crucial. Like listening to their concerns, understanding their needs, making them part of the solution. That's how you make a city that works for everyone.
It's about creating a sense of ownership, like everyone's responsible for the future of the city.
You got it. And while the challenges Vancouver's facing are, definitely big, they're not insurmountable. By being proactive, trying new things, and fostering that community spirit, the city can definitely move towards a better future.
So there's hope. Even with all these challenges, we've covered a lot, but there's still more to talk about. Stay tuned as we keep exploring potential solutions and what the future might hold for Vancouver in Part 3. Okay, so we've talked about why people are leaving Vancouver and all the problems this city's facing. But is there, another side to all of this? Could there be like a silver lining, you think?
It's funny you should say that. Sometimes these big shakeups can actually, they can lead to some good changes. Think about like a forest fire, right? Devastating at first, but then it clears the way for new growth, a stronger ecosystem.
And you're saying there could be some creative destruction happening in Vancouver. What would that even look like in a city, though?
Well, for one thing, it could rebalance the housing market. I mean, lower prices aren't great for people who already own homes, obviously. But it could give people who've been priced out a chance, let a new generation actually afford to live there.
So it's like bringing in new people, new ideas. That could be good for the city in the long run, right?
Exactly. And with a more diverse group of residents, you might see the cultural scene get a boost, new businesses popping up, all that, just a more, dynamic feel overall.
We talked about those areas around Vancouver too, right? With more cool stuff opening up. Wouldn't this exodus also benefit them? Seems like it could spread the wealth a bit.
Oh, absolutely. When people move to those areas, they bring their money and their desire for a good life. So you see more investment, jobs, a more balanced economy for the whole region. It's like moving away from that super concentrated city center and towards something more spread out.
Like a ripple effect, creating new opportunities in unexpected places.
Exactly. And this shift, it could also spark innovation. As Vancouver tries to deal with these challenges, they have to, think outside the box, come up with creative solutions for housing, transportation, sustainability. And that could lead to new technologies, policies, even urban design ideas that other cities could learn from.
So Vancouver's problems could actually become opportunities for growth, for progress even.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. But how does this all connect to, our listeners, even if they don't live in Vancouver, I mean?
That's the key point, really. Vancouver is kind of like a mini version of what's happening in cities all over the world. Those things we talked about, affordability, remote work, changing demographics, it's all happening everywhere. So by looking at Vancouver, we can kind of understand the forces that are shaping our own communities, and make better choices about how we want to live, work, all of that in the future.
It's a reminder that we're all connected. What happens in one city can affect so many others. What happens in Vancouver doesn't stay in Vancouver.
Exactly. And it's a call to action, too. We can't just, sit back and watch all this happen. We have to talk about it, push for policies that address these challenges, be a part of shaping our cities.
So as we wrap things up here, we'll leave you with this. What can you do right now to make your city a better place to live? A more vibrant, fair, resilient place. It's something to think about, because the choices we make today, they're going to shape the cities of tomorrow. That's it for this deep dive. Thanks for listening.